Welcome everybody, my name is EruptionFang and this is episode 11 of Nomad of Nowhere, titled The Red Carpet. So we begin on Toth and her crew hearing the news that the Nomad has been caught. She promptly heads to the oasis to confront Don and see if the rumors are indeed true. He confirms that yes, he does indeed have the Nomad in his possession and word has been sent out to El Rey. So because everything is all well and good, all that remains is the Yadalans being helped. But much to the dismay of Toth, the deal will not go fulfilled because Red Manuel was the one to turn him in. Also, Scout's been locked inside the dungeon. Alright, here's the thing. I do like the fact that Toth wasn't the one to turn the Nomad in. It would have been very cliche to have Toth turn in the Nomad and then have Don go back on his word. But in having Red Manuel be the one to claim the prize, Don's not the bad guy in this situation. Not really. I, as an audience member, was never under the presumption that once the Nomad was captured, the Yadalans would be given help. That was Toth's request, and Don said if you bring me the Nomad, I will help your people as a reward. And that's the key word here, it's a reward. Much like how rewards for wanted posters go, the reward isn't split amongst everyone who is hunting down the Nomad. The one who turns him in is the one who claims the bounty. So Don isn't really the bad guy here. If Toth was the one who turned in the Nomad, I'm sure she'd be treated like Red Manuel is now. But this is a domino effect from having Red Manuel capture the Nomad. I'm fine with him bringing in the Nomad, that's okay. But what I could not come up with a rational explanation to was Red Manuel's decision to not shoot Scout. I don't want Scout to get shot, but given what they set up, how they set it up, Scout should have been shot. Red Manuel doesn't care about her. Don practically said get rid of her, an emotion that implied killing her. And the fact that he fired a bullet at her should have been the nail in the coffin that either led to someone getting involved, allowing her to live, or her dying. So to do all of those things, having dialogue dedicated to Red Manuel talking about how he made up an entire story for why he killed her, and then justifying his reason to kill her, to then have him capture her, I'm not a fan of that. Given how they set it up, it should not have happened the way it did. Speaking of Scout, Toth goes down to the dungeon to break her out. She's no longer taking orders from Don anymore. Toth needs Scout and she apologizes for trying to get rid of her. Together they will capture the Nomad and bring him to El Rey. Oh. What a great moment that restores faith in the audience, but then immediately takes it away. It's like, yeah, oh. Of course Toth's goal hasn't changed, why would it? Her people still need water since there's no longer a way to have Don do it considering that he already has the Nomad. The next best thing is to give him to El Rey. Like, I don't know what I was thinking when it seemed like faith had been restored in these two, but logically this was the inevitable outcome. So Scout reveals to Toth that she did indeed attempt to help the Nomad escape. Toth gets angry and almost completely changes her mind with Scout. But the two sort of confess their love for one another, but like not really because the writers want to emotionally tax the audience as much as possible. So there's that. And then Scout locks Toth in a cell. Everything that happened in this scene between these two was great. I love that Scout makes her own decisions. She was introduced as a side piece to Toth, and it seemed like no matter what Toth would do, Scout would follow. But because of recent events, the show has really allowed Scout to stand on her own 2 feet as a character and form her own thoughts and motivations. You can see that she really does want to be with Toth, but not as she currently is. Toth's goal is noble, there's no denying that. But even Scout can see that she's completely blinded by her own made-up story. Scout has seen the Nomad do good things on more than one occasion. She has her own experiences that allow her to stand on the side she chooses, and she chose the Nomad. But probably the thing that I loved the most with this scene was Toth, or Scout, or the animators, or the writers, or the storyboarders. I'll be honest, I don't really know who to compliment here. What I loved the most was Toth's inability to look Scout in the face when she essentially lies. She did the exact same thing in episode 7. Toth, in my opinion, is a very strong character in more ways than just one, but not when it comes to Scout. She cannot look Scout in the face and tell herself lies. It's why she turned away when she said she was a liability, when she said that not even she can change her mind.
The Nomad's coming with me, and nothing's going to change my mind. Not even you. I'm afraid I'm going to have to reassign you. You're a weakness. One that I can't afford anymore.
It's because she knows that Scout isn't a liability. She knows that she can change her mind, but she doesn't have the ability to look at her when she says it because it's too much of a gamble for her people to risk. Toth does have her own goal, but she doesn't believe that there are options, and so her and Scout's paths divert here for now. What could happen, and I thought was a very funny theory, but a very plausible one at the same time that popped up around episode 3, was the water wheel theory. People began speculating that the water wheel that the Nomad brought to life in Bliss Hill has been alive this entire time, just rolling around all of nowhere. But in its path, it leaves a little trail behind. So the theory was that the water wheel would eventually make its way to the oasis, crash into the wall, and release water into the paths that it created around nowhere. This theory has been around since like episode 3 or something, and I never denounced it. I always thought that honestly it was a very likely resolution that the Oasis arc could end on. I probably should have brought it up like episode 6 or something when we learned that the Yadalans needed water. Then you could think that, oh, Bliss Hill needs water and so does literally everyone else that lives in this area of the world. So if it does happen, I'm gonna be kind of upset that I never brought it up until the pre-season finale, where by the time you watch this, the finale will already be out. But we will see. The other part of the episode that I have yet to mention is the Nomad himself. I mean, he kind of started the episode, but I wanted to cleanly talk about everyone and what they went through. So the Nomad is captured, and Don is kind of more so just playing with his food. Fortunately for the Nomad, the begonias are getting trampled, leading Don to exit the room. I don't 100% know how to feel about this scene. I didn't think it was bad, but I found myself questioning a lot of things as they happened. First was the use of fire. This I didn't think was bad, but I thought, does Don know that he's a scarecrow? We, as the audience, learned it last episode, so we can go like, oh yeah, he's scared of catching fire because he's so easily flammable. But does Don know that? I guess it could be passed off as he's just intimidating him with fire and anyone would be scared, but the way he said, "That's what I thought," seemed more like a, "I know your weakness" type deal. The other thing that I questioned was the Nomad's inability to clap, because from my perspective, nothing was actually stopping him. His fists were closed most of the time, but not all of the time. His palms are open, and even if your wrists are bound, you can still clap. In episode 5, it showed us that he still can use his magic when in restraints, and there was even a moment where he pulled a bit of space between his hands. I don't get what stopped him here. Then you have the questionable plot devices. First, you had Don throwing the torch inside the cage, as well as having the Nomad be guarded by 2 people. You know, the Nomad who's been wanted for over 100 years and is the key to all of Don's future success, he's gonna leave in the hands of 2 guards who are idiots. Once again, this is one of those things where if Nomad of Nowhere was a 100% narratively written show, I'd have a huge gripe with it. But considering that it has set up this sort of slapstick style of comedy, it's more of an excuse to get away with something like this. It's different to the Red Manuel situation because that had set up and everything leading up to it, but this is spur of the moment wackiness that at the end of the day I think does get away with it every now and then because it doesn't often rely on doing it. Anyway, so the Nomad does manage to break free and escape into the night. But he second guesses everything that he's done so far and makes a decision for himself. He must fight on a piñata. Hell yeah. So one of the things that I took away from this had to do with last episode. I wasn't 100% sure if the Nomad himself remembered his past or if it was just telling the audience his backstory. But when all the past voices were going through his head, Melinda's words were amongst the lot, as well as he had a bit of a hallucination as he saw her run by. There's not much more backstory that the Nomad could possibly have, considering everything. I would think that anything worth taking note of happened with Melinda. Yes, he spent like 100 years inside of his forest, but I don't think there are any more memories the show cares to share us inside of that location. But one of the things that I liked about this was the fact that it wasn't just the good guys the Nomad interacted with that he heeded advice from. I heard Tauros' champion in there. I feel the ranch hand could have had a quote shoved in there somewhere, but not the Twindleweeds though. The only advice that could be garnered from them is don't quit your day job. In terms of what'll happen next episode, I mean, it's the season finale. I think Scout and the Nomad are going to form a team. They're not together as of this moment, but I think the season will potentially leave off on the 2 becoming a team and trying to make Nowhere a better place. Them becoming a team would make the Nomad side of things very interesting, because Scout doesn't know who Melinda is, and the Nomad has no real way of telling a story, so Scout may not know for a while. But if the 2 are a team, then I'm sure it'd be very similar to his time with Melinda. I'm sure he'd constantly definitely try to protect her. They'd try to help the people of nowhere, and they might even get their own group wanted poster. Don, I hardly mentioned Don in this video. Don was just very entertaining this episode. As I said, he wasn't even the bad guy. I think Red Manuel was more of the I hate you type of villain, where Don was just kind of entertainingly annoying. He shot the finger pistols at someone. Twice. So I don't know what fate may befall him. He's definitely not becoming a governor, and he did say that El Rey was summoned, but I would be honestly shocked if we saw El Rey next episode. I don't think Don will die. Like I've said before, a lot of things are dependent on whether or not the show wants to keep its tone or make it more mature. The water wheel theory that I mentioned earlier is still very plausible. It would drain the oasis of its water, practically get rid of Don's power, and the people of nowhere have water. So in terms of a happily ever after regarding this area of the world, I'm going with the water wheel theory right now. It would tie up so many loose ends that I can't deny it. It's better than any outcome that I could come up with. So that was the episode. It did make some questionable decisions for me. Some I was okay with, others not so much. But with the whole Scout and Toth scene, I think that alone made this episode an overall positive. You know, that mixed with all the other good things the episode did. So for now, be sure to let me know what you guys thought of the episode down in the comments. Like the video if you liked it, subscribe if you're interested in more content like this. Consider becoming a sponsor over on Patreon, you get all the content early, and it really does help out the channel. Be sure to follow me on all social medias, and I'll see you in the next video.